Good afternoon, everyone.
Oh,
Well, I can only be on for about 15 minutes before I have to get on a plane, but I thought I'd join for what little bit I could.
thanks. I am um also trying to figure out how to join by mobile so that I can begin driving to the airport. Christian, unlike usual, you seem relatively stationary in comparison.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I
Mhm.
have not been at my house for a weekend since like the second week in December. I'm super
Oh,
excited not to be going anywhere.
that is so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some things were fun things, some things were work things, some things were family obligations. So glad.
Yep. Yep, but still, even though you signed up for everything, then you're like, do I live here? Well, I was just t telling like Danny and Misa because we have these measurements at my house and then nobody downloads them. But I feel because I'm not here a lot, I feel really disconnected from them, from the measurements. It's not, and I bet everybody perceives me as, well, you live there. Why can't you just do it? But we're like, you don't understand. I pass through. Okay, I am trying to figure out how to call in so I don't use data.
So
And I think,
while
go ahead, Paul.
so while we are waiting maybe for others, and while there's no announcement going on above me, um, Kristen, can you remind me for the survey, are we using tablets? Are we not using tablets? Did tablets end up crashing and burning?
No, we're still using them. It just depends on the person that's taking the survey if they prefer paper. We give them both options, basically.
Okay, got it. Because I think so I talked to the state director from Georgia this morning, and she sounds open to it, but the tablet would be far preferable.
Okay, yeah, we just
So,
the sometimes the tablets are a little clunky. So the New Mexico people thought the paper ones would work better, and so we've gotten more from paper, I think, than tablets, but
okay. Well, I mean, I suppose what we could do is just talk to them about it and maybe share what some of the clunkiness has been. And
mhm.
then if they're willing to proceed with it, send them tablets and paper, and then they'll figure out what works better for them, or if they just can't make it work.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got assuming they go forward, that means we got probably three states, Colorado, Georgia, and Vermont. And I I now know who the state program director is for Washington. And yeah, they've had a lot of change in who's the program director there. Turns out somebody that I've known for a really long time. And I just didn't have a chance to talk to him about it, but I primed him that I wanted to talk to him. So we'd make it maybe able to pull in Washington as well.
That's great. Yeah, I think by this time we just want to get it done. And I think the um Pi, maybe you can comment, but I think the tablets are preferable for us too because we don't have to enter them. But we're not talking about such large numbers that it's more important to get things done than to have it in a particular form.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to I'm gonna try to not use a lot of bandwidth because I still haven't figured out how to call in. I should be able to do that, but um, I just wanted to have a chat because we've raised in the past. I think we've done a good job at focusing on protection from outdoor air in this project, and then there have been projects that focus on protection from or just responding to indoor air. And then one thing that came up during the discussion of new projects was ideally you would want to be able to respond to both. And the impression I've gotten is that almost nobody is good at responding to both, right? Like there's guidelines set for indoor air, there's guidelines set for outdoor air, very little for outdoor air coming in, and nothing doing the whole thing. And so I think going all the way back to Sphere, that's been a principle that we wanted to pursue, but the principle is a nice thing, but then how would one actually go about that in terms of doing a project or a study or making progress? So that's like that's what I wanted to air and possibly like to try to make it a little more concrete, not just the idea of in principle we should do this, but what would be the next thing that we would do or what's missing? And other people can bring their own take to that question too.
I ask a clarifying question. Tammy, do you mean like that the system itself would um, be able to like vent the house out if it's bad, or close the house off to keep it safe? It'd be the same system toggling as necessary.
Well, I think so if it is to be managed by a system, then that is the answer. I'm not sure that the answer is always let's develop a system that does this. It could be, but I don't want to require that that be the answer immediately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. So it could be, for example, that you have an outdoor system like the one we have that you got that is being developed, and that outdoor system also gives of course, gives information on the indoor system. And when the outdoor air is not bad, the indoors you would have a sensors inside the house that would say, "Hey, you've still got a problem," which could
Yeah.
be smoking, it could be someone cooking, things like that. And then they would then do something about that indoor system, like turn on their exhaust fan or open their windows, right?
I think that's the general idea that there should be a more systemic way to um, treat hazards in the indoors and the outdoors, considering both of them.
So then on the indoor side, I mean, is do, would it just be a matter, and I know that's really loaded, but just a matter of from the tech side having sensors inside the house that would uh, determine what the indoor air was like, and then you'd put that maybe you can pie on as part of the screen that they would see. So you'd have your indoor. It's kind of like when you see your indoor temperature and your outdoor temperature on your thermostat.
Yeah, we already have that, right? That's already part of the system to have the indoor and the outdoor, but we're not managing it. We're
And
not.
we're not messaging about it, right?
Yeah, I think people see both, but we don't tell them what to do.
Okay. So
Yeah, so the
go ahead, Pi, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
this is
can
Christian.
confirm, and Christian was also about to chime in. So
Yeah, I'm guessing we're about to say almost the same thing.
yeah,
We report and log the insight, but we don't do any logic based on it. It's like we don't prompt people to do things. We don't do any interventions on it. We're logging it to see if the system is effective, and we present the information so people would be able to see it. But it's purely informative for participants right now, the indoor.
Oh, okay, so they could. So right now on the dashboard, they will see both. And we just don't tell them what to do if the indoor air is bad, right?
Correct. All interventions are based on outdoor only.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Okay, I'm gonna
Seems
go on
like we,
trying to make this work.
And I think that part of the
So,
rationale for that is because the
huh?
pressurization is unlikely to be very effective for indoor sources, or not nearly as effective at helping with indoor sources. So if we wanted to compare the two technologies on how they do with outdoor, it's only controlled from outdoor.
Okay, but let's say that you don't care or you don't need to build the system that the system that would take care of the indoor air problem, if prompted, would be the person. They might turn on a fan, they might open a window. Um, right? So you wouldn't
Correct.
necessarily have to have a system.
Yeah. And they have the ability right now to turn on the fan themselves. Like we've given them that option now. We're just not
Huh?
doing any communications around the indoors at all. We're not providing any guidance, as in now would be a good time to turn on your indoor filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on that, if we were going to say try to use something about what we're building here to be the to also deal with indoor sources, I mean, the furnace fan could still be useful, but we would not want to bring in the outside air. That would be useless. We would just want to be recirculating and have a decent filter that's basically it's sort of like a portable air cleaner. It's much larger.
Okay, so is it that we're kind of maybe in a situation where right now at least they are told about or they have indicators of a risk of your air is bad inside, um, but we're not telling them what to do to fix that, right? Sort of?
Correct.
Correct. We provide no guidance based on the indoors. All guidance is provided by the outdoors. Right.
The
So yeah, I
but
think
they
that's right.
they would see where the range was, right, Christian? I mean, they'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's not in a great range. It would be
Yeah.
colored or something like that."
Yeah. And the AQI colors are there, and
Yeah.
all those things. It's just no, it's just purely presented without any help for them to interpret it as it is right now for the indoor.
And I think that's part of what we've been complaining about with sensors is they tell you when it's bad, they don't tell you what to do necessarily. If it's an indoor air cleaner that's just going to clean whatever air you're inside, that's a little more straightforward. But yeah, we have a partial solution, it seems like.
Well, it seems like we would, I mean, just on even though it's not part of the intervention itself, we're not looking at like what they do about that particularly. It does seem like we might want to have something somewhere that explains to them that this indicator will tell your indoor and your outdoor. If you see that your outdoor air is bad, you might want to open a window or you might want to do X or Y. I don't know. It's a little funky to tell someone about something and not tell them what they could do to take care of it necessarily. That's not part of the bigger question we're at. It is kind of part of the bigger question we're asking. I mean, we could get some preliminary information, I would think, about like how often the indoor air goes bad. Because if Christian, you're monitoring that, we would have that information. And then I guess, at a post test, I mean, I think we were talking maybe at one point about talking to them about, well, what was their experience? We could ask them about whether they noticed or whether they were concerned more about their indoor air or noticed that it went bad at times. That would give you some beginning knowledge or level of concern that people have about their indoor air, which could then help with, figuring out how to do both.
Yeah, I think you raised some very good points. And I think we need to think about how we're going to respond, both within this study as well as what opportunities exist. Because from the data I think we've seen so far, piecing between the Epicombs data, the outdoor, the test sites, I think there's going to be a lot more indoor events that we could trigger on from indoor sources than we're going to see outdoor sources prompting us to do stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
so something I was thinking about in terms of these different ones is like in a perfect world, in the ultimate home sort of thing, we'd probably have a number of these technologies running in parallel because they're going to work well or work better under different scenarios, right? So a portable air cleaner probably is most effective at a localized source inside the home, right? So smoky kitchen, portable air cleaner in the kitchen, highly effective. Pressurization, maybe less so. Whole house filtration can work, but might be as overkill, right? An outdoor source affects all rooms in the home, I think. So a portable air cleaner only targets a narrow spot. And so I don't have a research idea in mind. Like I don't have the next proposal mapped out, but I do feel like there's maybe some opportunities from that the intervention is targeted to the source. And so if we can detect, well, this is an indoor source, not an outdoor source, intervention A should be the one turning on right now. This is scenario 2, which is an outdoor source. The whole home system should be running on. This is scenario 3, where outdoor is actually better than indoor. We should be pushing for dilution and opening a door or window. I don't know in the literature, but I bet we could make a pretty strong case that the mediocre effectiveness that some studies have found is because the intervention was trying to fix something it wasn't targeted for. And like a lot of studies have shown that portable air cleaners work well, but I think they'd work that much better if we were only running them at times that they had a chance of being effective. So again, I don't have a future proposal idea there, like fleshed out yet, but it seems like we have these different modalities of things that could be going on and coming up with like the kind of lookup table playbook of, well, if you see A, B, or C, this is the intervention that should be running right now. This is the thing that's been bouncing around in my brain the last couple of days.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm on hands-free now. So I'm kind of with Christian. I feel like I don't have a research idea because it just really seems like a kind of an algorithm development or an algorithm proposal, and I don't know how to turn that into research. It seems like all the stuff is fairly well known. It's just not put together. And that's the same problem with the system that we have, right? It's not that novel, but if it's not novel, why is it not being done? And so I don't know how to frame that, except that I do know that a lot of people either recognize or don't recognize that they are exposed to poor air quality, and then they don't know what to do. And it seems like we could do better, but I don't know that doing better is a research question, but it should be a sort of humanity question.
I think I mean, in my area, and I think Pi maybe where you are too, I would look at this as a research question because the idea would be in part that, if you're thinking more about air, whether it's indoor or outdoor, better knowledge of outdoor airs, and it can be bad. One of the questions is to what extent would that influence? Gosh, what about my indoor air? And the more that they would learn about different point sources of indoor air pollution, because I'm kind of thinking more of like smoking or, cooking, candles, stuff like that, because you've kind of got, you know where it is probably, and you can fairly quickly maybe take care of that, or you can point it out and say to someone, so if you have someone who smokes in your house, look what you're doing, you little goober. See how our air quality is getting worse, and stop, or something like that. I mean, it's a behavioral thing that can be done. One can be a cue to the other, and do people really care is the other piece of it. So I don't think that when people have their smoke detector go off, because they burned their dinner, they don't necessarily, I think, oh, this air is bad for me. They will think it stinks, it's smelly, that stuff, but are they really thinking, oh, this is not good for me physically? I don't even know that that's the case. So if in an ideal world, man, I would add another condition to a set of houses. That would be we they saw what their indoor air was, and then there were suggestions that were made to them about what to do. And then we looked in some way we logged whether they did that or not. And then you don't necessarily have to have in my view, a whiz bang system that would take care of the indoor air necessarily. I mean, that's automated. It could be, a person could take care of that themselves, unless they live in a place where it's really, really crappy indoor air and they don't really have the means to do it or something like that.
Yeah, one that I've thought about for a long time and I've never been able to come up with I think the research question for it is like the risk normalization or the desensitization people get to, because like we hear all the time people walk into a home that they haven't been in a while and they notice the air pollution, but they don't notice it when they're there every day. I think some of the things that we're doing for this project have opportunities, or like how do we break people out of that normalization so that they notice their air pollution without freaking them out. And we're doing some of that by like these prompts. But I think particularly for the indoor sources, because they're happening all of the time, and you're in your home so much of the time, you start to ignore them quickly. And speaking from somebody who has zero idea of why people do any of the things that they do, figuring out how you break people out of that normalization piece and get them actively engaged about being proactive with their air pollution again, I think would be great. I will be interested to see from our study. I think people will say they care about air pollution and then not make tangible steps. How we harmonize that disconnect or address that disconnect, I think will be an interesting one.
Yeah, and I think there's so we have a little bit of that, right, in the notification versus automation. I think there's actually some other questions, and I don't know how to unpick these really, but one of them is, would you pay for a system that just did it for you? And how do you know until you have that system, right? Because we know people will pay for systems to take care of other things in their home, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And so I think there's two levels, at least two levels of engagement. One is, do you have to do something and will you do that? And the other is, will you vote once, check the box that just says, yes, get me a home with better air quality. But that's maybe a little far afield from indoor versus outdoor, but I also feel like there's it's not complacency, but there's a sense of resignation. It's like, oh, we don't know what to do about it other than have an air cleaner. And so it's not perceived as an area in which you can make a difference. I don't know how to, again, unpick those things from each other.
I think that a couple of things come to mind for me. One is they don't know that their air is bad. So, I mean, I kind of draw a parallel to radon testing. You don't know you have bad radon until you get a test, and then you have this verification. Yes, you do, or no, you don't. And because there have been, the studies have tied it to cancer, that kind of gets people more excited, understandably. And there is a mitigation but then it's still, the mitigation costs money to do it, depending on what's going on in your house. And so, but you do have a test. You have something that shows you, yeah, and it shows you how high it is too. And that can cause someone to go like, oh gosh, this is really high. We need to take care of this. Or no, it's not. Or, well, maybe we don't go into the basement that much. It's not that big a deal. Or, so on. so one of the things is the idea of them being aware of it. Then they are going to and there's not a lot of work in this area that I know of where you're balancing risks, or you're balancing the cost of this risk versus that risk. I have one grad student who's looking at the joint situation where you have outdoor workers who have maybe dealing with poor air and extreme heat, and which one will they protect for first, and so on, and which one is more socially acceptable within their work groups to cope with, deal with more, and so on. One of those, though, is, again, extreme risk can get you, or extreme heat can get you quickly. At bad air, it can, but it's kind of a lower level risk. At least this is not people living that are firefighters that is in the study. So they're gonna make a trade-off. We know that, and and they're going to look at a cost benefit analysis. There are a lot of things that they will do to kind of decide, is this the big thing I need to do? And cost and convenience will matter. So I think that in some ways you can give people, well, probably, Tammy, the best way might be to give them comparisons. Okay, you found out these things are going on in your house, or these are problems you have. Rank order which ones you would fix first, or something, if you're thinking about that indoor environment and what they would be willing to do. Or do they still just want to get their house looking better and they want new windows, and that's going to trump everything? When we look at risks in isolation, it's useful, but it is also unlike what most of us deal with on a daily basis. We usually deal with, it's a risk benefit thing across a few risks.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's super interesting. And I think there's actually a lot of other information, or a lot of other studies that need to be brought together to answer that question. I'd kind of like to focus the conversation around the indoor versus outdoor thing. And I agree that its relative risk plays into whether this will be implemented. But I feel like we have a lot of potential knowledge around, and we've had a lot of discussions, right, for years now about, well, if you know what outdoor is and you know what indoor is, you choose the optimal solution to mitigate that at the most effectiveness, least cost. And yet we don't have such a solution. And so curious about that aspect of it. Is that just like, is it never going to be a research question? Is it something where you should just start a company and say this is what you're going to do and try to sell it to new home builders? I don't really know, but it feels like we've been talking around that for quite a while, and even in this project, which is pretty complex, we can't address it, or it's not part of the mandate yet. So where would we go with that?
Do you think like, Christian, with the data you've got that's there? I mean, I do think that there might be some stuff that we could glean from this that could set us down a path toward answering some particular questions about indoor versus outdoor and how people think about it. And, because we've got a situation where you're going to know about your indoor and your outdoor. We can fix your outdoor. We can't fix your indoor. We're telling you have a problem, but we're not saying our system will fix that. How interested are you in that? It could even be something like that added to and Pi. I'm thinking about, like, the questions you and Eric are thinking about for the questionnaires while they're in the homes. They've gotten some indicators that they've got bad outdoor air or bad indoor air. How do they feel about that? would they be willing to have a system or be interested in a system that would do both for them? And how much, even, I don't know, how much would they be willing to pay, possibly. But we could start to see, and they might be, well, yeah, I know what to do for that. All I need to know is that it's happening. And that tells you something, which is we have to build awareness and build the knowledge of what to do. And if it's like, oh, no, I'd rather someone else took care of that, great. Now you know you've got some indicators that building a system is worth spending the time and energy to do.
I feel like that's a lot chicken and egg though, generally. Because I feel like people take up systems that are shown to work, but they might not express a desire for them when they're only in a hypothetical.
These people are not in the hypothetical that are in the program. I mean, they know they have data. They've seen, I mean, they're being provided with data that's telling them that their indoor air has not been good at times. Most of the time, we're all going to assume, at least I would, my indoor air is okay. Nobody smokes in my house. We usually don't mess up bake cooking that much. So I'm going to assume I have clean air. I have a radon system. I already took care of that aspect of things, but my indoor air, I'm going to assume is good. I don't have any indicators. The people in the study in the homes have the indicators.
Yeah, I'm not really talking here about the real people who do exist and what they think. I don't doubt that isn't a real issue. What I am saying, though, is that if you ask people if they want something, their answer might not be the same as if they see it actually functioning and have its benefits. And I realize it would be stupid to develop something, put a lot of time into developing something for which there is no market. But I'm just saying that if you ask people if they want something and they don't know how much it costs and they don't know how it works, different thing from say going to somebody's house or school and going, hey, why can't I have that?
And I agree with you, Tammy. It is harder for people to deal with a hypothetical. It's like when you go out and buy a new car and you're like, you could get the upgrade and it can do this, this, and this for you, and you're going to love that. And you're like, well, I don't know if I will or not. Can I have the car for 2 months? Well, it'll be like, no, you can't. You have to decide now. But I'm just saying that if you have people who are being shown that they have bad air indoors or it's not great and they're not interested, it's not a great end. It's not anything. I'm just saying it's the beginning of some ideas. And often that's where I think some of this work, we could go from there and see, well, what about, moving on from there to something else, to seeing what's going on. And there are probably maybe other studies, Ellison, maybe some of the stuff you all have done where you're telling them more about maybe their indoor air. I mean, we could look and see, is anyone looking at that and what have they found? And then linking that to, in this case, this study shows you it's not good versus bad indoor versus the outdoor. And do we see some different patterns?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from other people. I'm guessing Paul is moved on by now, but I think I saw Ellison on before I leaped off the computer. I'm just curious what take is on that.
Well, I mean, I guess I can just say the same thing we learned from in our study. We saw that when people did receive information over time for actions that could be taken at either no cost or low friction, there's modest evidence that they did. I think similar, let's see. The way I interpret that finding is the people that are willing to participate in an indoor air quality intervention study already are highly self-selected for people that might take action based on information. So I definitely agree with Christian, your earlier point, that I don't know exactly how you put it, but it's like general public. Are they going to use that information even if they have it, even if it were for free? I think it would be a low signal to a lot of noise. I think what like in thinking of it more as a market segmentation issue, like if there is a niche market of people who are already primed to want to act on information, like understanding what kind, like then understanding their relative understanding of indoor versus outdoor, what can I do versus what can someone else do, starts to become more worthwhile from the perspective of what to deliver to them. And that's still not even addressing like willingness to pay. There's no, I don't know, we have no insight on that. Like we were paying them to participate. So,
Seeing a market for subscription-based air quality. First hit of clean air is free.
oh. I was like, you found this market because I have it. I don't think it exists. But yeah.
I mean, the thing that I'm coming back to a little bit too, Ellison and Christian and Tammy and everything is, the fact that people are spending more time in their homes. And so it becomes more of a concern because of that. And that, and it's one of those things where often, we're not going to get everyone on board with indoor air is this way. But if you can show the evidence that it's enough of a risk that it needs to be mitigated, then you may change building laws, building codes, things like that. So, and you do have to have people, even to get a policy change, enough people aware that they're going to be willing to support it, that they're going to fight back against if the builders are like, well, this is going to cost a lot of money, that kind of thing. We've seen that with radon, where, it used to be Fort Collins was trying to pass a law that said you have to test a house for radon and you have to give that information to a potential buyer. And it ended up being, and I don't know what it is now because I'm happy I haven't bought a house in a long time. But at the time, it ended up being in the 90s, early 2000s, probably, that you would give them a brochure that said, you may want to test for radon in your area because, there can be high radon levels, but that the homeowner was not required to do that as part of the sale. So there are multiple, in some places, multiple levers that can be pulled. Often we're trying to build some awareness, and you're right, definitely the people who are in these studies are self-selecting to be in them. Some are self-selecting because they're really interested in technology, or they're really interested in making their house better, or they know that the air is bad, and so we do have a very select group. But even if the select group won't do it, that tells you something too, because these are your innovators.
Yeah. Something you brought up reminded me of the other kind of indoor-outdoor one that's been bouncing around in my head. I know we're getting to the end, so I don't have time to really flesh it out. But this sense of false security I think people have in their indoor. When we have a fire event, the recommendation is to go inside and close your doors. And I apologize if I'm stealing ideas because I know I've talked to some people about this and I can't remember who all was brainstorming about it. But I think there's a real possibility that there's a false sense of security and exposure actually goes up compared to the norm during these events. People are closing their doors and hunkering down at home. And how can we deal with that of, no, don't go outside, but you also have to do these things inside because you're tightened up your home so much.
Well, Christian, you bring into mind something that I just had to teach, or not had to, chose to teach on in my air quality engineering class yesterday, which was the technical documentation underlying the AQI. And it was, it's been a while since I've really looked at it. What was interesting to note was that how emphatically EPA kept saying the purpose of the AQI is to answer a single question: is it safe to go outside? Which is a bit of a simplification if you're more like, oh, I'm interested in it, or I want to know what it is. But really, the way that the AQI is developed is to answer that one question, is it safe to go outside? And so they have definitions for who's at risk and what the different colors mean. But one thing that I guess comes to mind is like, it doesn't seem harmful to imagine some incremental change to AQI that would provide answers to other questions like, is it safe to go outside? No. So you have to be inside. Now what? That like you could imagine that evolving. There was a time when we didn't have the AQI. So anyway, that's what came to mind when you were talking about that false sense of security.
Well, I think these are both really, really interesting things because I hadn't thought about, the AQI. Thanks, Ellison, was, reminding that that's for outdoor and it's going to have to be tweaked, I guess, in some way or something for you to decide what indoor air bad levels are, so that the stuff that the indicators that the folks in the study will get is based on the AQI for outdoor air. And that whole idea of, you're safe in your house, or you're at least safer, maybe, or what is going on, particularly if we've got places where they routinely get bad air. I wonder, gosh, you'd think there'd been some study. I bet there have, maybe, been some studies in some of the areas where they had bad air for a good period, good chunk of time, and what did people do? Did they stay at home? Did they get a lot of air cleaners? Did they evacuate? Because don't they at certain times they'll say, well, get the heck out of here. The air's bad, period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it has to be super high, I think, for the.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wonder if there's studies on those Canadian fires, maybe.
Yeah. The only one I know of in terms of like the purchasing one, like do people buy things, was the take home from that one. I'll see if I can find this article again. Was because it took so long to get things, everybody's intervention became available after the risk was gone. And so it was talking about, well, there's nothing to sustain. So you buy this thing, but you don't use it because it's not necessary right now. And it's like, that's the first death knell to a successful intervention is you don't use it on day one. So, but I bet there's a lot more on it than that, just one study.
Yeah. Maybe we could, I don't know, Kristen, like get together over coffee or something, or and just talk a little more about what maybe we could get, and anyone else, certainly Pi and Ellison. I mean to just say, hey, Kristen, you and I go have coffee. But I do think there's some things that could start to tease out a few things from the data that is gathered in this that can kind of head down a road. There are a lot, but and if nothing else would tell us what other literature do we need to go into to look at to see where we might find some indicators of X and Y, and then once you paint that picture, then what's next, and is it worthwhile?
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. I think some of these ones just take so long to get the background data to make the case. If we can come up with some of these ideas and build them in now, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I agree. Well, maybe Ellison, we could start, at another time with more about like what a reminder of the stuff that you've done and how people have responded to it, and then thinking about what would be gathered on this study that might start to answer some of the things that came up from the other one, and then looking at some of these other areas. I'm kind of thinking about also Oh, and I know they're out there, I just can't think of the behavioral economists who go like, well, it costs you this much for this and this much for
Mhm.
that and all that good stuff. That we've got some of those folks on campus too.
Yeah.
I think we could even look at the stuff with WUI, fire mitigate, wildfire mitigation for homeowners.
Mhm.
And what they're saying now about like even after the Superior fire, what people in Colorado should do as far as you should have X number of, you know, you don't have trees near your house, don't do X or Y. Or the fires are up in Oregon. I had a friend who got her area was wiped out. They're starting to build back, things like that. But what they are and are not doing, and that the idea of
Mhm.
fire safe homes maybe could, I don't know. It's a different threat, but it has some similarities because there's cost involved. It may never happen involved. I don't know. But I think we could get some stuff together.
Yeah, I think thinking about this more as like a time time sensitive response window. I think many hours of time that people spend in their home, that this isn't the thing they're solving for, but there are some windows where it is the top priority. So
Yeah.
Allison, can you remind me, were any of your Epic homes during a forest fire event? Did that data
yeah,
overlap?
there were early in the study that we had some people under the Cameron Peak fire.
Okay.
Like maybe just a couple. Um, we weren't doing any intervention,
Right.
and mostly people just wanted to see when we reported out to them, wanted to see what the indoor pollution was during the fire. It wasn't, I don't remember actually any home where it was higher on a hour to hour comparison basis, but I think your point about exposures, I be worth exploring. I don't know, did you have another question related to that? Like, I'm not quite sure
No,
what you.
I think you kind of got to it. I was just wondering if some of your data might have some of the teaser info about, well, are people actually sealing up their homes and it's worse during a forest fire event? Like, there's a lot of pieces we need to be able to show that, like how
Yeah,
we how we would separate infiltration versus indoor sources during
yeah.
a fire event. Just mostly thinking out loud about how we might deal with some of these. Um, well, I got to jump off here in 2 minutes, but what I can do is I can write up very short little blurbs about what I've been thinking about from these two topics and circulate them around, just at least so something tangible if people want to bounce ideas off of. They're super early and not very well baked in my brain yet, so just getting some sanity check um, things and all of that would be helpful. But I can take a first crack at some descriptor text.
Okay.
That'd be great. That also could help me to look at that kind of and think about areas that I know about, other kinds of similar risks or things where we might be able to draw some from other, yeah, God, I'm not saying this well, but that would help is the,
Yeah, yeah, happy to do so.
yeah, thanks.
Thanks everyone for the brainstorming. So I gotta jump off here, but have a good weekend, and
Yeah.
I'll try and get some of these drafted up over the weekend or wherever for next week.
Okay. Thanks, Christian.
Thanks, Christian.
Good talking with you all.
See ya.
Bye.